like in a few minutes then. Good morning to everyone. Just waiting a few moments that everyone is coming to our event today. So good morning, everyone, and we are already starting with the event today. This event is a kind of an opening of a series of public events which will be dedicated to the topic of local development, and today we will talk more about local development and its relation to regional policies and regional development. And in general, all these events are organized by Cedos think tank in cooperation with the European University Viadrina and Frankfurt, Oder. And today we would like to make a space to discuss the issues which can be found in the local development topic and also in regional development in Ukraine and also in other countries, especially in Poland, Germany, France, Belarus, and also other countries. And so we will have an opportunity to have an exchange of knowledge and expertise between the people who are active in this field. And we will have today the two panels. The first panel will be more discussion which bring the academic perspective to the local development and we will discuss the concept of local development and how it's related to the regional policies. And we also will talk about the decentralization process in Ukraine and also in other countries. Then we will have a short break, and after that we will have the second panel, which will bring more practitioners in the field of local development, specifically the representatives of civil authorities and also civil society, which are also dealing with the local development in their practice. We will have also the specific attention to the topics of transnationality and cross-sectorality on this panel. And also, I would like to say that this event is a part of the project Ukraine Calling Cross-Sectoral Capacity Building, which is founded by the German Foreign Office within the program of Civil Society Cooperation. And now I would like to pass the word to Stefan Henkel, who is a project manager of the project Ukraine Calling.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. Hello, everybody. It's really nice to see you all here. Distinguished researchers, representatives from the civil society, coming from different spheres as arts, journalism, human rights, and last but not least, of course, politicians as well, contributing to today's panels. Dear guests, it's really an honor to have the chance to meet you all here. My name is Stefan Henkel. I'm representing European University Viadrina, located directly on the border between Germany and Poland. And traditionally, we have this really strong focus on transnational work. On the one hand, in the framework of the Weimar Triangle. So we have also close ties to France and of course to Poland, but we are talking more and more about the Weimar Triangle Plus. That means including, of course, Ukraine and also Belarus. That's why we have this already running this project for the 6th year. Ukraine Calling has now supported already 75 organizations, mainly from the civil society that had project ideas they wanted to implement with international partners. And we are more than happy actually to have this kind of an open panel here with the kind support of Cedos. And I want to mention Olena Sirbu for her work, especially actually. Thanks a lot again for this. And also Romain Lequinou from the our partner as well, Eurocreative, a think tank based in Paris, contributing to today's panels as well. So long story short, very good to see you all here. I'm looking forward a lot to the panels, and we will also have the chance to have a small exchange with the audience after each panel as well. So have a good meeting and see you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And before we start, I have a small technical remark. I would like to ask you just please to turn off your microphone when you are not speaking. You can turn on a video if you want, but please just turn off your mic, just that we don't hear some other sounds. And now I would like to pass the word to Pavlo Fedorev, who is an urban geographer and housing policy analyst at Cedos think tank, and he will moderate our first panel.
Всіх вітаю, доброго дня, шановні гості.
Hello everyone, hello dear guests, representatives of different organizations. We are very happy to welcome you at this event, and we are very grateful to European University of Viadrina for the possibility to work together on this important event and to raise up the issues of regional policies, development and decentralization, and discuss how they influence the geographic, political issues in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine, and also on Ukrainian and European society. I was thinking to make a 7-minute discussion about the regional policy in Ukraine and whether it is changing dynamically because we changed state strategies and we approach another mechanism of how we are gonna be governing on the territory of Ukraine. The previous development strategy stated that the tension and subvention system will help to level the economical development between different communities and regions to provide the high quality of living irrespective of the place of residence. The new strategy shows that it's a transition to stimulating the development poles, which will develop and will help others to develop as well. I'm very happy to see here doctors and PhDs who will share their academic views. In 2014, I read the work of Mr. Vlad Mikhnenko about diversion-based economy in Ukraine. And it was very important to understand for me what is the geography of Ukraine and what is the place of Kiev and what is the accumulation horizon. In 2016, I read the report of the World Bank on the urbanization processes, and Ol Hamrinska was participating in the creation of this report, and I was impressed with the understanding of Ukraine as a country which takes the way of sharpening, strengthening the inequalities, unfortunately. And the maximum economical effects of the 90s were accumulated in certain places. With Miss Olga Shevchenko, I met her before and I read her dissertation recently. And I was very interested in this dissertation. There was a detailed analysis of the tools and models of regulating of this development disproportions. And I would like to discuss whether this works, like the suggestion of Ms. Olga could transform into guidelines, into practical guidelines. And as to Igor Alexandrovich, I saw a book, From Reform to Reform. This is the name of this book, and I would really like to talk to him about when the reform, territorial reform ends, or it maybe never ends. In Ukraine, we often say that we need to make decentralization and then the territorial communities will have a lot of opportunities to grow. They will activate the local development and the state will just help them. Is it like this, or maybe this is the process that actually never stops, the process of regulating the territory and the communities? And the analytical note that we have published with my colleague Yulia Nazarenko last week, I tried to make a general overview of what is happening today in Ukraine and Europe, how regional policies changed historically, and about cohesion as the basis of regional policy, and we very often forget about this aspect. Also to talk about the risks of decentralization and about the search of new scales. Will it be local councils or city agglomerations? So this is not only the question of whether they should be created, but how to manage them, how to make formalize the relationships between all the actors. On one hand, no, I will start differently. 5 years ago, I read the book of Neil Bryan, and it was about the rescaling of governing in post-war Europe, the transition to stimulating internal development. And one of the ideas that I had after reading this book was to try to look at what's happening in Ukraine. Is decentralization can be considered as a rescaling in the conditions of sectoral reforms and savings in attempt to find the best balance? In 2018, we were making a project with which was had the name Urbanization Outlook, but because of some methodological problems that State Statistics Service was not collecting the data, certain type of data, and there were difficulties to evaluate the internal regional differences. It turned out into recommendations. We tried to see what Ukraine knows about their cities and communities, and The recommendations on what type of data should be collected. In 2019, I read the article of Dr. Mikhnenko that he wrote with Martin Wolf, where he says that despite what Brenner and other theoreticians say, regions are, there is a certain approximation between the regions, they get closer. There is more cohesion. Why? Because you cannot ignore the policy of cohesion, and European Union is implementing this policy actually very actively during the latest decades. And despite that cohesion in Ukrainian strategy has more declarative nature, there is a question whether the existing inequalities could be sharpened in the process of decentralization or not, if there is such a threat. And I would like to discuss all these questions and the other questions that were announced earlier. In the first speech, I would like to ask Mr. Makhnenko to share his perspective on this. What kind of landscape is forming capitalism in Europe? How economical and political power is being exercised? What's happening? And to talk on the macro perspective. So you have 7 minutes. I can give you a signal when you will have 1 minute left, or if you don't need this, just please remember about the timing.
I would like to interrupt just for 1 second on one technical also thing, that if you need a translation to English, you have the below at the menu, you have the button in the form of globe, and you can choose translation if you need a translation from Ukrainian to English, and there will be a simultaneous translation. Thank you. Thank you.
Добре, тоді, Павло, я починаю, так?
Okay, Pavlo, then I will start.
Не можу. I'm not allowed to share the screen. Олена, я не можу share screen зробити.
Давайте я вам з цим
Lena, I
допоможу.
have difficulties with sharing screen. Okay, I'm gonna help you. I will try to share your presentation on my screen. Just a second.
Просто мені будете казати, коли...
Just tell me when you need me turn the next slide.
Добре, дуже дякую всім учасникам і дякую.
Thank you very much to all the participants. Thank you, Pavlo, for your nice words about my work. I don't have a lot of time, so very quickly I will try to cover the main topics that Pavlo announced in his introduction. Next slide.
Так, стаття, яку Павло...
The article that Pavlo mentioned about against divergent space economy, the origin revolution, post-Soviet development models and regional trajectories. We wrote it in 2007. It was the first English-speaking article about regional differences and divergency in Ukraine. This article is not in the open access, unfortunately, but those who want, you can ask me and I'll send you the copy. What was interesting for us when we were working on it is that the very simple methodological work on typology of space economy in Ukraine, spatial economy in Ukraine, and based on the specifics of different Ukrainian region, it gives us the triple typology in which the biggest part of the Ukrainian regions were specialized on agriculture as of the middle of 2000s. So you can see a light gray color on the map for regions have industry. This Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, Zaporizhzhia Oblast, and also we see Poltavska region. So basically the regions that you see in medium gray color, also 5 regions that were more diversified and were oriented on services.
The majority of regions are agricultural, some of them are industrial, and approximately 5 were specialized in providing services. Since that time, some scientists continued developing the typology of Ukrainian regions, specialized region, and I will tell you later about it. How it has changed starting from 2006, how specialization of the regions has changed. Next slide, please. This typology it cannot be compared with economic development of the region. On this map, you can see those regions of Ukraine in dark gray. These are the regions which were the richest regions of Ukraine. The GDP per capita, by GDP per capita. On this map, you can see income of the population per capita out of 100% of Ukraine. Those regions marked in dark gray were the richest. Of course, Kyiv was the richest among all the regions of Ukraine. Industrial specialization in services or agriculture didn't 100% correspond to the economic development of the regions. This map was probably the most memorable one. We created every region, a map of every region, judging by its contribution to the GDP of Ukraine. So these huge dark gray point which you see in the center, this is Kyiv and Kyiv region. It was not only the richest city and region in Ukraine, but it was also growing fast. This map shows regions by their level of economic development, and the colors showcase those regions which were developing fast. And you can see that Kyiv and Kyiv region were, of course, growing the fastest in Ukraine. This is probably what made Pavlo and other colleagues starting a conversation about the divergence of regions of Ukraine. I've always been interested in taking a look how the level of divergence, disproportions of regions of Ukraine can be compared with other countries of the world or trade blocs of the world. Here you can see data for 2008, and you can see that Ukrainian level of regional disproportion was quite huge. Ukraine back then was in top five of the countries. Only Russia, Indonesia, Mexico and India had a bigger disproportion than Ukraine, and Ukraine was made it to the 5th place on this list. Then we have Brazil, Hungary, Bulgaria, China, and the EU. The average number was 28. Disproportion in Ukraine was not the biggest in the world, but one of the top. Next slide, please. Okay, so we can see this slide. Then we took a look at the question how a rescaling of the country, state rescaling or decentralization, influenced a disproportion in regional development. Next slide, please. You can find this article. It can be accessed for free. You can read it in English. It was also published in Ukrainian language, so you can find it on my website. It was interesting that starting from 1995 to 2015, different countries and trade blocs had different development trends. Some countries, such as Russia, starting from 2015, it has started the process of decreasing regional disproportions. Countries of North NAFTA countries, they increased these disproportions. Disproportions were growing in the US, Australia, and some other countries. In Brazil, China, and South Africa, they were decreasing. Next slide, please. So the question was how decentralization and state scaling influenced disproportions. And it hasn't been tackled fully yet. In 2018, and it was published the work which was called Decentralization in Ukraine, which answered several questions that Pablo had asked and other participants had asked about the influence of decentralization and how it corresponds to the regional development. They compared they did something similar to what I did. They compared the level of disproportion in some countries, in some of the richest countries and countries with a transitional economy. As you can see on the slide, Ukraine is in one of the top places near Slovakia, Russia, Brazil, and other countries. Starting from 2003, to 2014, this disproportion has increased. And in 2015, it increased even more. So disproportions in Ukraine increase. Next slide, please. And the regional economy has some answers to that question. You can see this page where you can see a research by OECD, how regions grow, which tells about the need to rebuild its regional economy from the older paradigm to the new one. I hope that we will be able to discuss it in detail during the panel discussion. Starting from so these are within the past 20 years, these numbers changed. And on this slide, you can see the annotation of this paradigm, which was published in 2019 OECD Regional Outlook, which gives you more characteristics of local regional policy. But I hope that we will be able to discuss it in more detail later today. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. Okay, Olga Mrinska, now over to you. Thank you so much. I hope you can see me well.
Today to speak. Я не думаю, що я дуже чітко відношусь до категорії академіків.
I cannot tell myself that I'm among the academics, but I worked in the sphere of regional policy development in 2007, 2008. I had the opportunity to take part in developing the law on regional policy and the first strategy of state regional development in 2006. This was the first time when we used the principle of polarization, subsidiarity, additional development. These are all these concepts which had existed in Ukraine starting from the new millennia, but the problem was not in the documents, but in practical implementation. I don't have much time, that is why I would like to focus on 4 key questions and to see what is happening in Europe. This systemic question, I hope we will be able to discuss them later. So this is first what we do. I think that today there are no discrepancies in understanding what is regional policy and what are the tasks of this regional policy. Ukraine corresponds 100% to European standards, not only European, but to other OECD or to other developed countries in terms of regional development. The progress that we managed to reach in the sphere of decentralization, fiscal decentralization, local government development, these are the minimal requirements that we have discussed before, and it finally happened. We managed to overcome two key challenges on our way of further creation of endogenic development of the regions. So who does it? Who is doing this? Because at the regional, at the central level, we have very strong development teams, and in regions we also have these teams. Thank you so much for the slides. Finally, you can see the slides. No, the previous one, sorry. So the next question, who does this? It has been answered partly because the number of actors, independent actors on the regional level increase. But I'm not sure that the central government has the opportunity to be in equal dialogue with these partners. I also can disagree with some of the points that Pablo has said. In Ukraine, the state is very important, but regional policy is the policy of cities, of municipalities, of towns, of those administrative units that have the right to do so. And it is also about relations. Probably you remember that in Ukraine, we had a tool of regional development, which was signed by the cabinet of ministers and regional administrations. This is also an element which answers to the question who. So the next question is, why are we doing this? How are we doing this? Every country has its own tasks. We cannot ignore the fact that part of our territory has been occupied, that there is a war raging in the east of the country. So it is important to ensure cohesion and safety of our territory. In Europe, if you take a look at the policy of recent years, the safety and security policy is also a priority, but it is related to the migration issues and to other issues which influence the process of to the level of safety and security. In Ukraine, it's a little bit different. It seems to me that this theory of changes is lacking in our country. How these investments that we do now will influence our future development, because we are mostly oriented towards short-term goals. But how many schools, how many roads have been built, how many schools have been repaired? We don't know how it will lead to increasing competitiveness of regions, how it will increase the level of awareness or technological development. We do not build these roads. I don't mean physical roads, by these logical pathways. And then the last question, how are we doing this? We see the synergetic effect from the implementation of regional policy, but it doesn't always happen on the practical level. We have a huge number of really great parts of the system which do not talk to each other, so there is no synergy. So what is happening in Ukraine? I would like to say that in some sense we have this idealization of what is happening in Europe. But I would like to tell you about some of the disadvantages. For example, heterogeneity. What is happening in Hungary? The cities have lost their government, their self-governing options. In Ukraine, it's totally different. In the UK, what has happened within the past 10 years, when the local government level has been completely destroyed, this is also a bad example of European development strategy. Some countries have also similar problems. For example, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. These are the countries who are aiming to reach to become carbon neutral until 2050. Then we also have to tell between policy and politics. In Ukraine, we don't have this difference between these two words. One of our ministers has said that the regional policy shall be outside of politics. I can disagree with him because I think that these policies shall be above politics. It shall be supra-political. All politicians shall have a good understanding of what is happening, but we do not have it. For example, the yesterday decision of the Kiev Council attests to this fact. If we are reading expert opinions of the recent financial framework, if you take a look at those priorities, which are they in the cohesion policy for the European Union for the next 7 years, they say that there is a huge drawback. They say that this policy lacks a long-term strategy, that Lisbon strategy or Europe 2020. So there are no clear tasks. And moreover, a lot of changes has happened to state-based policies that the Commission is talking about. They haven't been stipulated in this new strategy, unfortunately. The imperatives which are very strong in Europe, these are carbon neutrality until 2050, and this is water resources and other resources. Some of you remember the situation in Kyiv last year, so we all understand that climate changes and climate catastrophe, this is something very real. It is very important how we use our resources, even our reconstruction of schools and business centers. So the question is, which materials we use to build them? Are we following the carbon footprint of these development projects? We do not have that. In Europe, they do closely follow the impact. There are a lot of tools. For example, the European Union has recently introduced Just Transition Initiative. This is the initiative this is the Just Transition Fund, Just Transition to Carbon Neutral Economy. For example, the coal mining regions in Poland, Slovakia, and other countries which really suffer because of that, which would like they would get new jobs and new economic opportunities for development. Of course, we have the policy of digitalization, the system of government which is going online. Next slide, please. This is a concrete tool which we can use. If we are talking about the future, what we shall do and what we shan't do, first of all, we need to get away from this complex of inferiority. We will need to spend less resources on translation, with less content lost in translation. We shall not forget about the conflict in Ukraine, about the war in Ukraine, because if you now say that we need to attract foreign investment, our rating is actually very low, investment rating. I work in an international financial institution, so the price of investment are really high. We need to take a look at the situation from the point of view of our safety situation and sovereignty ratings. And last but not least, of course, Ukraine shall take a look at the EU policy, but we are not a member of the EU, so we don't have some of the limits and rigidities that European Union has. Because we don't have to find all the partners, so we have state level, regional level, and local level. That is why we can use best practices, but we need to understand our advantages, our strengths. Thank you so much. I really like your last point that we have this agency and we can make changes, but we do not have to stick to different rigidities and limits that exist in the EU.
Now I would like to give the floor Dr. Igor Ksenik. You have 7 minutes. Yes. Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank for the invitation. It's a great honor to be presenting for this audience. I would like to say a couple of words based on Polish perspective. Next slide, please. And next slide. So I would like to start with the term of local development. How do we understand this in Poland? First of all, this is an economical term. Here I gave an example of term or explanation of the term used by Jacek Chodzinski from the University of Lodz. He's explaining what is local development. And I could finish my speech with this actually and pass the floor to my colleagues. But the local governing specialists also deal with local development. Why? Because the local development is possible only in conditions of decentralization. Theoretically, we can imagine some kind of form of local development in the centralized state. We can remember the times of USSR. I don't remember them very well, but still, or we can imagine a very reasonable king who will take care of his people locally. But the real local development is possible only within the local self-governing and decentralization. But I would like to draw your attention to several threats connected with centralization. These are the views, perspectives of two representatives of law. One of them has passed away, unfortunately. So first of all, when decentralization is implemented without democratization and the real implementation of rule of law, this may result in oligarchization. Second, in the states, when we have the tradition of the power vertical, let's take Ukraine as an example, and the Soviet legacy that it deals with, and such states, decentralization. It doesn't have to, but it can turn into some fake resemblance of decentralization. And in some emergency conditions as war or natural disaster. But in Ukraine, what is from the legal perspective of international law, it's not what is happening in Ukraine is determined as international conflict, not war, because the open war was never declared. So in such conditions, the cohesion is very important, and the state has to be centralized. Next slide, please. I would like to draw your attention to some differences in understanding of the word local. What is local? If we take a look at the Polish model of self-governing, we're talking not about local, but territorial or community self-governing. There is a word, territorial or community in Ukrainian, but when we have about the administrative and territorial division of, but not in terms of self-governing. In the Polish reality, it means something that is the closest to the people, so it's local. In the Polish condition, local is something that happened at the very basic level of self-development. So we have gmina as a municipality and powiat as a community. So the regional self-governing is the level of voivodstvo or region. And it is a different approach. In Ukraine, the situation is different. At all the levels, we speak about local self-governance. Next slide, please. So it's and of course, it has its consequences. In Poland, we speak about communities at all the levels of self-governance. So all the people living in gmina or municipality, they take part in the level of powiat or territorial communities. They create the territorial community, and same at the level of the regional voivode. This is not what happens in Ukraine. According to the law of self-governance, the local and district councils, they present the common interests of the communities. And what if the communities doesn't have common interests? Next slide. So the policy of development in Poland, what is this? I would like to draw attention to three things. This is the system. So what is the objective? To ensure the development of the country, coherence, to provide the competitive economy, to create new working places at the national, regional, and what we are most interested today, local level. Next slide, please. If we're talking about the actors of the development policy of development in Poland, we can see a kind of pyramid hierarchic structure. So there is a minister council of government that adopts the concept of the country development in a mid-term perspective. Then it is the self-governance of the regions, which is responsible for the strategy of development of the region. The next level is the metropolitan communities. Actually, there is one. There is an industrial region in the south of Poland, a kind of Polish Donbas. So there is this metropolitan community, and this is the strategy of over local development. And also at the level of municipality, gmina or powiat, they are able to adopt the local development strategy and also the strategy of a broader development. Next slide. So this is the kind of hierarchy in Poland from national to regional and from local to regional and national. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Olga, the floor is yours. Hello, dear participants. I would like to share my thoughts about the current regional policy in Ukraine and how it influences solving the old and new problems of regional developments. Could you please put on my slides? Thank you. As a person who's been dealing with regional development for some time, I can say that state regional policy in Ukraine, which is described in the relevant document, has changed considerably. The latest documents are considerably different from what was before. What do I mean? because Ukraine now is in the stage of decentralization, and also the internal political and external political situation has changed. The regional policy changed as well, and there are four peculiar features. It's the principles of implementing of state regional policy. Also, there are functional types of territories that become the objects of governing, and also there are territorial organizations and regional policies, and we come to another level of regional development. How do we evaluate the local development as a synergy of action of many actors that influence the implementation of policies in regions and territorial communities? This is the agreed action of business structures, CSOs, local bodies, academician, expert society, and all the citizens that taking part in the development of the strategy of further development. So the objectives of local development are the objectives concerning the development of economics and social sphere, forming of human resources, development of civil society, and this all is concentrated in the common objective as to increase the competitive abilities of the regions and communities. It means that local development strategy has to be in compliance with the targets of development. And this is how we can see that the reform and this change of regional policy should comply with it. Next slide, please. So the first peculiar feature of regional policy is the principles of is determining the principles of regional policies. Of course, they were present before in different laws, in concepts of regional policies and other documents. And these principles that were determined are as follows. And we can add new principles: principle of innovation, principle of development, a principle of sticking to the interests that streamlines the concept of local development, which means without taking into account the interests of all the actors, everyone who's taking part in regional and local policies, we cannot speak about innovation, development, and sustainable development of the community. And the community will not be able to reach the targets, and the country cannot reach its targets. If we talk about the issues of regional policy, then functional determination of territories gives us that we are trying to implement the principles of local development, territorial-oriented approach. So this policy is not implemented to all the territories, but to certain types, and we can see that some of them are determined already. And the problematics of these territories is concentrated, for example, transbordinary territories, village territories, and occupied territories of Ukraine. So these territories need special attention, and some specific policies and guidelines should be developed for them. Next slide, please. Here we can see that one of the targets of regional policies is the disproportion in the certain indicators. We see that some of them didn't change, some of them increased considerably. These are indicators that describe the investments, external economic activities, export and import activities. And it is another factor telling us that we really need to switch to local projects aimed on development that are able to reveal the potential of the regions to level the disproportion or to decrease this disproportion. The third peculiar feature is that the role of community in the regional policy increases, and both in science and in practice, we need to understand what is community, what kind of governing tools it has, what kind of financial resource it has, tools and authorities it has to really become an actor in state policy. Also, we have to keep in mind that we have occupied territories in Ukraine, and this changes all the network of regional connections, and it has been taken into account in all the relevant policies and guidelines. Next slide, please. So the principle of local development, the role of principles of local development increases, and it means we need to find new instruments to stimulate the local economical development, like investments, attracting investments, accumulating of finances, using the human resources, increasing the number of working places, and this will allow us to increase the institutional capacity of the communities. And it means that decentralization and local governance reform, they reinforce the principle of local economical development, and it already has both theoretical and practical basis to be implemented in Ukraine to address all the long and current problems of social economical development. Thank you very much for your attention.
Дякую вам. Якщо в
Thank
когось
you,
є якісь
Ms.
уточнення
Olga. If
стосовно
someone
діагностики,
has
можна
any
зараз.
questions, you can ask them right now.
А якщо ні, то можемо просто перейти до
If not,
наступного
we
розділу.
can switch
А,
to
я
next
насправді
our
дуже вам всім за такі цікаві
next
перспективи того,
activity.
що
I'm very
відбувається.
grateful for you for sharing this very interesting perspectives on what
Перше
is
запитання, яке
happening.
хотілося б
And one of
поставити,
the
це,
first
власне,
questions that I
які б
have is how
описали
would you
основні важливі
describe the general
в
change
регіональній політиці
in the
і
regional
підходах,
policy
що
and the
відбуваються
approaches
в
to
Україні
it
та
that
в
is now observed
Європі
in Ukraine and
загалом
in
за
Europe
останні десятиліття.
generally during the last decade?
Що це за траєкторія? Чи вони
What kind of direction, what kind of vector is this? Or maybe these are two different vectors, directions, and we cannot describe them in one sentence. And another question, what,
оті зміни, яка є сьогодні, наприклад, в державних
for example,
стратегіях регіонального розвитку, чого їм бракує?
what these changes miss,
В довільному порядку,
what these
якщо
changes
ви
lack,
маєте там
the
ще
changes
раз
that are now
можливо,
in
ви
the
описали зміни
state
принципів
strategy.
підходів,
Again, how would you
а
describe
також
the
що
change
їм
of the
бракує
principles and
сьогоднішній
approaches,
стратегії
and
регіонального розвитку в
what
Україні?
the strategy of regional development lacks today?
Я можу почати.
I can start.
Я хочу сказати, що
I
сьогоднішня
would like to
стратегія
say that
на мою
the
думку,
strategy as of today doesn't lack anything. I think there are too much of everything, because when we speak about strategy, these are priorities. And when we have too many priorities and very limited resources, it's a big question. What do we lack is the implementation of the strategy, and the previous two waves proved it. We have experts who were with us in 19 and in 2019, 2020, and we can see how many things were not implemented actually. But when we're speaking about the packages of reforms, as decentralization, as fiscal decentralization, within the implementation of budget code that was adopted in 2021, and some resources were added, and they were allocated not only for the project, but on the soft elements, so-called soft elements. So there was a great work done to build the capacity of local and regional experts and specialists. I'm very happy to see a lot of young, new faces, people of new generation who are interested in local governance. And in Ukraine during the last 5 years, especially, there, a lot of impact investors emerged. This is not only the renovation in Ivano-Frankivsk. There are a lot of examples. There are a lot of non-state organizations and business structures and associations that join regional development. So this network is really big, and it reaches a lot of spheres: development of village territories, medium and small business, saving of resources, energy efficiency, energy independence, and it's all interrelated. If in the regional and local level you have the people who understand how to tie this all together, then there is a synergy. For example, Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, they really advanced, but there are not a lot of amalgamated territorial communities where we see the successful example of local development. So when we speak about big strategies and big documents, we have to keep in mind about this independent processes of changes that take place, and they are not always controlled by the centralized mechanisms. So the top-down and bottom-up link, central and local policies, this link should be in the focus of the state policy, but in terms of implementing.
Дякую вам.
Yes, I also would like to add.
Там в пана Ігора була рука.
Yeah, Mr. Igor raised his hands first, and then please, Ms. Olga. Thank you very much. I would like to draw your attention to two aspects. As to this modern policy of regional development of Ukraine, what is lacking from the legal perspective, I think there is lack of changes in constitution. Implementing self-governing on sub-regional and regional levels. Why this process taking so long time? Because in Minsk agreement, Russia made a trap, saying that through decentralization, hoping that through the decentralization, the autonomy of the non-government controlled areas should be recognized. And now the task is very difficult for Ukrainian authorities, for the parliament, how these constitutional changes could look like, how they could be formulated. We don't know what will be the solution, what the solution will be. We know that the first attempt of amendments to the constitution was done by the previous president, but it was not successful. The next attempt of President Zelensky not successful as well. So maybe this year there will be another attempt to implement the constitutional amendments. We'll see. And the second aspect, and there is a risk not only for the regional policy, but for self-government, is a re-centralization that we observe in certain countries of Europe. Hungary, it was mentioned about the processes happening in Hungary at the moment, unfortunately, and in Poland as well. We see this re-centralization when the authorities are taken from the territories to the central bodies.
I must say that local government or territorial government, using this terminology, this is always the enemy for authoritarian system of a government. Where there is authoritarian system of government, there is no place for decentralization and for local government. So it's always a risk. Hungary and Poland, if you have, and other countries where similar processes are taking place, that we can see these at once. It is easy to see. Thank you. Olha, now over to you. I would like to add to this question what regional development policy in Ukraine lacks. It lacks mechanism of implementation because it was developed several years ago, and despite that the mechanism is good, it lacks practical mechanism of implementation. But we see that there are perspectives of implementation. It lacks institutional links which could link a strategic objective, strategic goal with clear practical tasks. The Association of Regional Development or other stakeholders, Organization of European Society must do something so this top structure is emerged into the local structures in order to get this basis for implementation of this policy. So it shall be a real practical task rather than strategic goals which were introduced at the very beginning. So we lack these institutional links in our regional policy. Thank you. I can add to that that within the past 20 years, so there is discussion in the scientific, in the academia about this people-based policy, regional policy, which is space neutral, which increases infrastructure and increases human potential, human capital, which invests into the education and into scientific research. On the other hand, we have people we have a place-based policy, which allegedly pays more attention to concrete places rather than to people who live there. This discussion has been there for more than 20 years. Right now, more institutions in the European Union are preferring place-based policy because they think it's the best way to work with regional development. But it seems to me that Ukraine should not get into the trap of discussions about these two different paradigms. We need big problems even with people-based policy. We have huge problems with normal macroeconomic policy, with normal fiscal policy. We have problems with rule of law. We have many national problems that we haven't tackled yet. Without tackling these problems, we cannot develop, we cannot implement regional projects. We need to have this understanding that regional policy has developed quite far, but we still lag behind in these basic national problems. Without solving them, without reforming our court system, for example, we cannot proceed. We cannot proceed with modern solutions to our regional policy. They just simply won't work. Ukraine must have this understanding that first or simultaneously we need to tackle state problems to reform our state policy and then to tackle regional policy. Thank you. I would like to comment. You are telling us that this is development in different levels in local, regional, national. One of the questions, one of the tasks that we had at the very beginning, how regional policy is different from the local, and what is the place of the local policy in regional policy? If we are talking about local development, so can you please tell us about this a combination of regional and local development, how they are different and similar? Well, it seems to me that I have quite a conservative mainstream approach to these. What I mean by local sustainable development, economic geography tells us that towns and cities are points of growth, and we need to invest into cities, into towns, and then we need to pay less attention to other settlements, to agricultural settlements. If agriculture is developing, and people will naturally move from the big cities to villages. So I think we need to support urbanization, and cities are those points of growth. If the question was about it, it seems to me that we need to invest into cities. We need to pay attention to big cities. I have nothing to say that. I don't have any radical views in this area. I would like to add to that, that I agree with Vlad that cities, if we're talking about this classical system, they are like poles that are interconnected by vectors. Urban, rural policy and village and urban policy shall be interconnected. We are now talking about agglomerations, about urban zones. So this is what is very important. If we are looking at the most successful projects, then the most successful regions are those which had implemented most regional projects. There are such terms as interregional territorial investment. This is a new tool which provides financial funds for cooperation between the big city and neighboring municipalities. A good example is Warsaw and 40 gminas. They have this funding for cooperation between the city, the big city, and territorial units around it. So this is similar what we have in Kiev and smaller towns such as Bucha and others. We have this labor migration every day from these towns to city. People are going there to work, but we do not have a proper policy of creating jobs during the pandemic when most people work from home. This question is even more important. The question is about digital infrastructure. If we have high-speed internet near Kiev, it means that these towns can people in these towns have more opportunities for growth, and cities have more opportunities for growth. It rarely happens that the sister cities are developing thanks to it. It seems to me that the local policy, this is a glue which glues together these zones between themselves. Of course, in those countries with strong federal governments, this policy is implemented at federal level. In Ukraine, because of the existing destabilization processes, for example, when Rodriguez and Pazet say about the revenge of the places that don't that don't matter, the conflict in Donbass is a great example when this revenge has gone too far. Right now, we are reaping the fruit of the situation. Donetsk was the second richest, economically richest oblast, but it was on the 25th or 26th place socially and using other indicators. So all the economic advantages which exist in this region were not translated into high quality level of social life in this region. So we need to avoid this problem of oligarchic interests. I don't know what happens in Mariupol, but I think there are different tools, and the more democratic tools we use, or the more democratic stakeholders are engaged in this process, the more opportunities there are in this region. EBRD, the bank that I'm working for, 4 years ago, it has launched in Mariupol an initiative, a program called Green Cities Framework. Thanks to this program, using Trigger investment, we enter this city, we create plans of green development in Mariupol. One of the brightest example where a lot of changes happen thanks to ecological and green investments. It seems to me that there is hope in that approach. Thank you, Olha. Somebody has raised their hand, so you can ask your question. May I ask a question? Yes, of course. Irina Storonyanska, Institute of Regional Research from Lviv. It's a pleasure for me to, I'm grateful to Olha, who mentioned Lviv when she was talking about positive practices. But I would like to join your discussion. Pavlo, you were telling us about local and regional policy. So I would like to comment on this question. You were talking about these growth points that we are talking about within the framework of the new development framework. I agree with Olha. I think that the local policy is usually oriented towards itself. What changes growth points from just from territories that have a high level of development? This is a present of those external impulses. If we're talking about a regional development strategy, if we're talking about growth points, we are waiting that these growth points will really become those impulses will that will share their development from the top to the bottom. We have discussed, we have submitted this question to the Ministry of Regions. More than half of these growth points, they do not generate these impulses of growth. And actually the effect is reverse. These growth points are formed in the less developed regions. It means that they steal the potential from regions, from points which could have been easily developed. So if we continue investing money into these 150 projects, will we get the results that we are planning to get? Or probably there will be another place like Kyiv, which concentrates resources but doesn't provide enough positive impulses for development of the adjacent regions, adjacent territories. So I think that we shall not talk only about, we shall talk about regional policy and local policy and about these growth points, but not only as places which have been selected from top down, but we shall talk about these growth points as places that generate impulses of growth. Thank you, Irina. When I asked this question, what we lack in this area, after reading the strategy for 2021-2027, I wanted, or even reading by the World Bank research and different articles by Mr. Mekhnenko about the decreasing number of cities in Europe. We understand that a lot of cities in Ukraine also have a lot of problems because they have outdated city building documentation. There are these ideas about continuous growth, about eternal growth, without understanding how this growth might be generated. The world as well decreasing. There is we are talking about the decrease in developing of these cities. In a couple of minutes, we will end the first part of our discussion, but the adequacy of understanding what will happen to this network of cities. There is an impetus, a nudge for developing these local territories, but I don't know how it might happen that our cities are actually decreasing, reducing, declining. Vlad, can you start maybe? Okay, thank you. Pavlo, thank you so much for the question. Yes, we had 52 million of people at the beginning of the independence of Ukraine. As of now, we have 38. So this is a huge decrease in the number in the population. If everything goes in this way, I think that within the next 50 years, the situation will look very difficult. We cannot say that this is catastrophe and the end of the world, because Ukraine has a huge potential. We have Ukraine has a lot of towns and villages and cities where a lot of people live. Of course, there is a potential for urbanization because only 30% of the population lives in rural areas, and if agriculture will develop the way it develops now, these people will most probably move to big cities. So I think there is a huge potential and it is very important. But what is interesting in the world, the population is declining in most countries. For example, except such countries such as the US, where there is a huge influx of migrants. In China and some Asian countries, there is a decrease in population. So I think this question will be raised more and more in the European Union. Some of the recent documents of the EU are telling about decrease in population, decline in population, about different problems related to this. But there is a progress in this area in the world which Ukraine can use. But there is potential for urbanization in Ukraine. Thank you so much, Vlad. So unfortunately, we don't have enough time. We have about 5 minutes for our discussion left. And I would like to give it over to Andrei Ginkul. So Andrei, over to you now. Yes, I would like to say that this is, you were talking about decline of the cities. This is very important for not for the big cities, but for these smaller territorial communities, which should have been the driver for development. But this is not happening. The Ministry of Regions, they don't see it. This decline in the number of population is the biggest challenge for any regional policy, taking into account that between the central level, where this strategy has been adopted, and the difference between these central government and real life in these small towns and villages. So there is a huge gap. There are no people, there are no human resources, there's no potential, there's no cooperation which would ensure implementation of this strategy. Why I'm talking about this? Because first, starting from 2015, for 5 years, we've been creating these centers of regional development all over Ukraine, but it hasn't been efficient enough. The reason behind that is that A, nobody needs us, B, nobody wants that, nobody understands that, local stakeholders are not interested in it. Then, together with the state statistics, we prepared statistics in 2017 about regional development. So the Ministry of Regions hasn't supported this creation of the system of statistics because it is easier to spend money from the state budget to do that. So this is hard truth, but I need to tell that. A lot of Ukrainians are moving abroad. They do not get back to the native cities or towns. And this is the fundamental risk, which within the next years, not even in the next 10 years, will lead to problems in most communities in Ukraine. The Ministry of Regional Development closes the eyes to these problems. So it seems
Дякую, Андрій.
They are not interested in it. Thank you, Andriy. What about other speakers? Do you want to comment on that?
Ще хотілося б додати стосовно міст і
So
урбанізації.
I wanted to ask about the cities and urbanization. So decentralization reform, of course, influences the reduction of the population. And because of the uniting of the territories into some regional centers, also influences this. If it was a depressive territory when there was no job, the people will move out, will continue moving out. So decentralization have this negative effect. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, for this discussion. We have 5 minutes of break at 13:30. We will continue talking about the issues of local development and regional policies. Thank you very much. 5 minutes of break. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and also I would like just to add that there was a very fruitful discussion, and maybe we didn't have the time to discuss all the things that you would like to discuss. So at the end, we will have 25 minutes just to, after the second panel, we will have 20 or 25 minutes to have a space maybe to say something, to discuss, yeah, if you just wanted to say something. And now we have a break till 12:30.
So I will kindly ask the speakers and the moderator of the second panel to unmute yourself and to show your video. So just we can check if everything is all right.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hello?
We hear you.
Hello. Yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
So we're waiting for Andriy and
Okay, I've already downloaded Bella's presentation, so I guess everything okay with that. And I can show it.
Пане Андрій, чи можна вас попросити розм'ютити мікрофон, щоб ми перевірили аудіо?
Чуєте мене? Доброго
Чуємо
дня.
вас. Добрий день.
Да, добре, да, і видно, і чути, так?
Так, все супер.
Добре, дякую.
Спасибі.
just one question, Olena. What is the maximum time for the discussion? It's 1, yes? The limit, the time limit.
Yeah, we have to finish like in 1 hour. So.
Oh, in 1 hour, so 12 plus. Okay, 30. Okay, good.
Bonjour Romain.
Bonjour.
Vous êtes basé où?
Entre Paris et Varsovie. Donc là, actuellement à Varsovie. Mais vous êtes à Bruxelles, c'est ça?
Oui. Ouais.
Ok. Ok. Mais je suis très ravi de vous
Merci
rencontrer.
beaucoup pour votre promotion, etc., de mon invitation. C'est gentil.
Très ravi de vous rencontrer. J'espère qu'on pourra peut-être parler ces prochains jours, prochaines semaines pour savoir un petit peu plus ce que chacun fait.
Oui, ça sera intéressant.
I would like to ask if Mr. Jacek Jaśkowiak is here. Oh, okay. Yes, I think that Pan Jacek Jaśkowiak is here.
Welcome, everybody.
Dzień dobry.
Dobry.
Dobrze. Okay.
So I think we can start with our second panel. And on the second panel, we will talk more about the local development and the issues related to it from the perspective of civil society actors and also the representatives of civil authorities. And now, and also a technical reminder that if you need a translation to Ukrainian or to English, you can choose it in the menu below. There is a button in the shape of globe, so you can choose the translation if you need it. And now I would like to pass the word to Roman Lecunu, who is a co-founder and managing director of Eurocreative, a think tank in France, which is focused on Central and Eastern European development, and who will moderate the second panel discussion.
Dear Olena, many thanks, distinguished panelists, dear participants from Ukraine Calling. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second part of today's event. So as Olena said, I'm Romain Lequignou, co-founder and managing director of Eurocreative. And so we are focusing our activities on Central Eastern Europe, a region which is at the heart of our event today, but which remains unfortunately too little known in my country. Today, I have the great pleasure to moderate a fantastic discussion during which we will talk about concrete experiences from civil society and executive authorities when it comes to local development. In the past hour, you had the chance to attend a great debate about what is local development, mostly at a theoretical and academic level. Now it's time to dig into concrete practice with practitioners on the field. So turning to the examples of Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, but also from some other EU member states, we will look into implementations of local development initiatives based on the experience and observations of representatives from both executive authorities and civil society organizations. But before I introduce our distinguished speakers, let me briefly mention the structure of our discussion. So first, I would like to give the opportunity to our 4 speakers to present their personal and professional experiences regarding local development. It can be seen as an extended round of presentations. And second, the discussion will be split between 2 topics. On the first side, cross-sectorality, and on the other side, transnationality. 2 dimensions which are very essential when it comes to local development and for which our guests are particularly familiar with. And finally, I would like also to remember that questions from the audience will be taken during our discussion. So feel free to ask them via our chat if you are on Zoom, or via even Facebook Live. We will do our best to collect them simultaneously. So as I said, I'm really pleased to moderate the discussion today, and I have the great pleasure to welcome our first distinguished guest, Mr. Jacek Jaśkowiak, Mayor of Poznan, city I personally had the chance to visit several times when I was living in Poland. Mr. Jaśkowiak, you are the mayor, or we can say president in Polish, of Poznan since 2014. So I believe you have a lot to share in terms of local development and regional policy practices from both Poznan, but also from the Voivodeship of Wielkopolska. So more precisely, what can local authorities do to solve the problems of the local community, and what should be, according to you, the priorities of local development?
We have in Poznan about 1,500 NGOs. And telling the truth, before I was elected as the mayor of Poznan, I was involved in many activities, in culture, in sport. Even I was organizing a World Cup cross-country skiing races, competitions in Poland, in Szklarska Poręba. And so before I've been elected, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people who were active in the society. And so for me, it was easier to cooperate, to start better cooperation with NGOs, because, you know, from one side, I have a trust to such people. And for me, it is a very good platform to involve more citizens into the public life. It is also the good opportunity to use such activities, giving them some money to solve some problems we have in Poznan or in the region. And it could be in sport, in culture, but also in many different areas. What we started to do after being elected. First, we gave them the opportunity to use the public spaces, some spaces where they could work, where they could meet and discuss some things. For me, it was not the problem that some NGOs are not positive to the mayor, to the city council. Very often they criticize a lot of things. I mean, especially people who are active in some areas with environment. Sometimes they are very radical, and but at the end, they want something positive. They want to change something. And even if it is not possible to use all the advices of them, it is good to speak with them, to discuss some things, to look for some decision. And it is, of course, not so easy work, but at the end, I think it is a part of modern society. You have many people, and if some people are so quite opposite, or they are not so, they have some objections to the parties, to the politicians, and so on. It is also the way to take a lot of very interesting people having involved into the society, into solving a lot of problems. And so if we have such possibility if we have some flats, some apartments or such things. We try to support NGOs because I strongly believe it is the best way to develop the society, to change the society, and if people are involved, they have better understanding what's going on. So it is my conclusion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Minister, Mr. Meyer. You are talking about proactive cooperation. I'm sure we can detail that in the next questions. Let me now turn to our second distinguished guest, Mr. Andrei Okeretny. You are Deputy Mayor of the Ukrainian city of Venezia. Mr. Okeretny, my introductory question will be quite similar to the previous one. And so what is your personal experience regarding local development and regional policy? And according to you, how can these practices help to fix problems at the local level in your city?
Доброго дня усім присутнім.
Hello, everyone, dear guests, dear participants. Vinnytsia is different from the other cities of Ukraine in a positive way because we have over 10 years of experience of strategic planning. It was started in 2010 by Vinnytsia city mayor, Pan Groisman. And the strategy implemented in 2020, the strategy of Vinnytsia development as a European city, the city friendly to people, was implemented, like 80% of it was implemented, and this is quite a good rate for the strategy. It was a very successful project. Speaking of the year 2020, which was a crisis year, pandemic year, we developed a bigger strategic document, the development of our community up to 2030, taking into account the territorial changes. Vinnytsia has become a territorial community as most of the cities in Ukraine, and now before we had 140 hectares, and now the territory was almost doubled. So we had 370 inhabitants, and now we have 388,000 of population. We have silent challenges, of course, but we have new strategy of implementation, which was supported by the majority of the council of members of parliament. So what is important for us? Each citizen of Vinnytsia is important. Second, strategy, zero tolerance to corruption, and third, involvement. So we want our citizens to be involved in taking decisions. We have the project of civil initiative, so the citizens of Vinnytsia can apply with their projects and vote for them, and we increase budget for support of this project this year. Also, we support the institutes of civil society. Speaking of 6 strategic key priorities of our strategy 2030, though the first priority is the digitalization of municipal space, second, integrated development, third, high quality of services and modern infrastructure. The 2 other priorities that are combined is the green economy and smart specialization. We want to make our city smart, and we want to have new technologies. And the 6th priority, the city magnet. So we want to develop this direction and reach not less than 80% of implementation of our strategy as well.
Якщо говорити про
Speaking of what this experience gave to us, the decentralization experience, what it gave to us, the increase of the budget. So the budgets of all territorial communities increased, so we have more opportunities. Speaking of year 2020, we adopted the program, the citizens of Vinnytsia are important. It was the first problem of this kind that was started in Ukraine. When the pandemic started, we determined 3 basic priorities to tackle this situation: is the social protection, corona health, and the support of economy. And this helped us to survive in 2020, and we prolonged the strategy on 2021, and focusing on these three key moments allowed Vinica to be stronger compared to other cities in the time of pandemic, and it managed to support health protection, provide social protection for the citizens, and to maintain economy. Speaking of budget and taxes, so we have increase of personal incomes, and it gave us a possibility to do more accurate planning. And we implemented a lot of key moments in 2020 despite pandemic. We are supported at the level of the Ministry of Territorial Development, and the Fund of Regional Development supports our key projects. In 2020, we commissioned new school for 1,200 children, also to kindergarten, and generally we have commissioned 5 kindergartens during the last 5 years. We built some new roads in Vinica city, and it gave us, we did it due to the mechanisms that were provided by decentralization program. We reconstructed some stadiums, and this year we planned the reconstruction of big sport complex, and we think we would be able to do this. We did the modernization of schools. We did a lot on this in 2020, and we plan to finish this project this year. Also, we plan to commission another kindergarten, and is a municipal kindergarten.
You know, the recommendations of the review, I think there are certain...
I'm sorry, someone else should be speaking right now. Okay. Speaking of positive things, new infrastructural projects were implemented, Vinica territorial community was created, and new territories were joined, and the budget was increased. So also, but we increased the budget, but our responsibility also increased, and we understand that the citizens of Vinica expect more and more, and the ratings that we have today are really high. I want to remind you that 6 years in a row, Vinica is called the most comfortable city for living in Ukraine, according to the International Republican Institute. So 6 years in a row, we are in the top. In March of 2021, we did a survey about the transparency, and more than 100 cities of Ukraine took place, and we received the first place, 99 points out of 100 in transparency, allocation of budget, and zero tolerance to corruption. Speaking of the city development, we see the development of our city connected with small and medium business, and for big business, we created 3 industrial parks. We work on the creation of technological park, taking the example of Poland. And our practice really inspires us. We work hard to borrow the best experience from France on clusterization, because we are agrarian region, and we want to integrate the enterprises of Vinica and Vinica region into this cluster work. So we have a lot of success, and actually we have more successful things than drawbacks. So the drawbacks is that we have a lot of things not approved, not agreed on the state level. We have to pass certain laws, but there is a movement, and it is very intensive. And by our positive practice, we want to show that newly created territorial communities can have a good life, can provide comfortable life for everyone, opportunity to work and have leisure. And this is what our teamwork aimed is, together with this head of the city council, Serhiy Morgun, who was re-elected for the second term in 2020.
Many thanks for this concrete insights on what is going on in Vinnytsia. I'm sure we will come back to some specificities of it, especially you mentioned budgetary aspects, but also transnational cooperation and also cross-sectoral. So we will come back to that. But now I would like to give the floor to our last two distinguished speakers, namely the representatives from civil society organizations. And so I have the great pleasure to welcome Madame Bella Tseherishvili. Madame Tseherishvili, you are coordinator of Eastern Partnership projects at Platforma, which is a network of local and regional governments. And so, as an introduction, I would like you to share your personal experience with EU development policy, especially in regards to Eastern Partnership countries and the practices you experienced both in EU and non-EU states. And more concretely, according to you, what is the role of regional and local governments in development cooperation?
Hello, thank you very much. May I have my presentation shared, please? Perfect. So let's start. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me today. I am very pleased to speak on behalf of Platforma and to share our Eastern Partnership related activities on local level with you. First of all, I would like just to underline that we are not a civil society, part of civil society, but we represent local authorities. We are a coalition of local authorities and their respective associations. So next slide, please. Yes, thank you very much. So I'm going to explain you 3 points as you asked. So who we are, what we do in terms of concrete examples I would like to share with you. And also, as you asked, what about European development cooperation policy? So I would like just to explain what's a decentralized cooperation. So decentralized cooperation is defined by the European Commission as a development cooperation between local authorities from Europe and their counterparts from partner countries. So Platforma is, as you said already, is a pan-European coalition of European local and regional governments and their associations active in decentralized development cooperation. So Platforma is led by CMR. Can you hear me?
У мене просто виник палінчак ще, знаєш, походу зараз на БАМі.
Hello,
this is good.
Homa?
You can go on, Bella.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I was hearing parallel. So yes, I was thinking that Platforma is a pan-European coalition, and we are led by CMR, Council of European Municipalities and Regions, and we support city-to-city, region-to-region partnership with European local and regional governments, of course. Next slide, please. When it comes to Eastern Partnership Program. So since 2015, Platforma is developing an Eastern Partnership Program aiming and strengthening local and regional governance and developing capacity buildings of national associations of local authorities, in particular in Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. So associated clubs, as we call them sometimes. So what we do in terms of concrete examples when it comes to this Eastern Partnership Program on decentralized cooperation. So we have 3 main pillars. So one of them is multi-level political dialogue at local, national, and European level. So we have, for instance, a European Union Eastern Partnership Local Leaders Forum. We organize this once per year, and we gather all the actors from the European Commission, European Parliament, the presidencies from EU, and also national governments, ministries, and of course, actors from local level. So we next local leaders forum we will have this year in autumn. We do not have a date yet, but we would like to do it a physical meeting. So let's see how we could do this. So we have also geographic dialogues. So geographic dialogues, it means dialogue with the European Commission and our members from Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. So associations and local actors to speak with the European Commission and to exchange with them their priorities and agendas. Next main pillar for us is to facilitate capacity building and peer learning between Eastern Partnership and European Union pillars. For instance, we have study visits in France, for example, from your country, Roman. We had last year a study visit for Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgian elected representatives, but also associations to meet in France and to have a study visit on waste management. Okay, how they deal waste management. Also, we have seminars organized by our partners from Europe, Latvia, Lithuania, France, as I said, on different topics. For instance, on climate, on gender equality, on youth. Right now, we cannot organize physical exchanges, but from the next year, we are going to have these study visits and also seminars to sit down together, the peers from EU and Eastern Partnership countries, and to exchange on their agendas. And the last very important, but not least important point is to support decentralization and public administration reforms in these three countries. So the first pillar was discussion session was dedicated to decentralization and public administration reforms in Ukraine. So we have from Ukraine, just for information, we have our member is the AUC, Association of Ukrainian Cities, and they are very active. And we work with them and also with colleagues from Georgia and Moldova to create peer exchanges. And also we organize coordination seminars. We invite again multi-level representatives, for example, EU delegations, national associations, national governments, ministries, and to speak about what are challenges in terms of decentralization and public administration reforms and why it's vital for these countries. In terms of practice, we, for instance, we developed publications on decentralization and public administration reforms in Georgia, in Moldova, and in Ukraine. For instance, and these publications, this research work, it gives us possibility to have a full picture what's happening in these countries and what kind of recommendations and next steps we could take in terms of to advance decentralization and public administration reforms in these countries. And I would like just to speak you. I am sure you know very well in Ukraine the program EU Lead with Europe. So we have a project with them. We started just last month. It's very recent project we have, and we call it Bridges of Trust. A very nice name, you could agree. And it's we aim with this. It's just only with Ukraine. So we aim with this Bridges of Trust project to develop viable partnership between 10 municipalities, small-sized municipalities from Ukraine, and 10 small-sized municipalities from European Union, from different countries, to have matchmaking and to have their thematic areas to cooperate. It could be waste management, it could be gender equality, etc. Yes, that's I wanted to share with you the practice, what we are doing as Platforma with our members. But maybe next slide, please. And you asked the last point I would like to explain to you. It's what's happening on EU level on development policy. So as you very probably you know already, European Union proposed a new package of global Europe instruments. So as you know, the new programming period the new budget will start. It started already. Will start from this summer. It's 6 years of budgeting programming 2021 to 2027. So it's a 6-year program, and in terms of EU development policy, European Union proposed this package which called Global Europe Instruments. So it's a new neighborhood development and international cooperation instrument. So all the activities is inside in one single document, instrument, let's say. So the whole budget of this is 79 billion euros. So in this funding, it will be 3 main pillars. It's a geographic approach, it's a thematic approach, and rapid response, like crises, like climate change related disasters, etc. And when it comes to us, what's happening for Eastern Partnership countries, how we could use this funding. In general, for local authorities, so just for information, we have been advocating for this document since 2 years, yes, more than 2 years. So we succeeded. We are very happy to see this part in this programming that it says the local authorities under the geographic programs should amount at least 500 million euros. So, and after I would like to go deeper and to say this, when it comes to geographic approach of this programming, for instance, this instrument says that in terms of funding, the funds should be allocated in order to implement European Union Association Agreement in these countries, for instance, in Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. So what happens on local level? So what we advocate as Platforma and myself is to localize association agreements and to localize European Union Eastern Partnership policy agenda in general. So because we think that local and regional authorities areas of competencies are an integral part of the main objectives for the implementation of association agreements. For instance, next slide, please. And I would like here to demonstrate for you that you see on the screen the priorities of this document and the competencies could have on local level. So what kind of competencies and what kind of policy could be implemented on local level from this program? For instance, it could be public administration reforms, it could be environment and climate resilience, gender equality, state reforms, delivery and public services, and digital means, digital resilience, of course, and all priority areas of the European Union. Very last point, I would like to just to say hello to our speakers from Poznan and Vinnytsia. I know that your Polish association is a part of CMR, Council of European Municipalities and Regions, and they are very active, and they we have a close relationship with them in terms of gender equality, because we have a charter on gender equality for local level. And Venezia, city of Vinnytsia, sorry, they are signatories of the charter, and they have very successful gender equality action plans as well. So I would be happy to ask you questions if you have any. And yes, that was all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So it was a concrete illustration of how you do as Platforma your role of facilitator, engaging dialogues with municipalities. And also thanks for giving us more insights on the EU policy towards the Eastern Partnership and supporting actions. So last but not least, I would like to welcome Madam Lisaveta Chepikova. Madam Chepikova, you are an architect, urbanist, and project manager at Minsk Urban Platform, a partner organization of Ukraine Calling program, by the way. I would like you to share your thoughts on local development in Belarus, its specific problems and current tendencies. Of course, I'm sure that the events of the past few months have considerably impacted your work on activities and daily activities. So please feel free to share these with us. And I'm convinced you would like to mention also one of your specific projects, which is Vori project. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I will share my presentation. One second. Yeah, I think you will see my presentation. Firstly, I would like to say that I will present not the achievement of our organization. I mostly present context of Belarus on Minsk and experience of decentralized self-organization of citizens and what happened in Belarus and civil society and community neighborhood in last year. It will be the main topic of my presentation. Firstly, I will say a few words about my organization. I represent Minsk Urban Platform. It's an NGO that has been operating since 2014, and for 7 years we have a lot of education events and some participatory projects, and also we work with alternative projects of development territory. And I would like to call our experience as attempt to work with the space and communities in a non-democratic country. And I would like to say a few words about civil society and community before August 9th. Firstly, we have several projects, several participatory projects in Belarus and Minsk. It's alternative courtyards of the Zavod Serbianka and Kotovka Square and Serbianka Municipalny. We try to work with community and make with them some positive change, but in Belarus it's really difficult because we have really atomized society and people didn't trust to each other and didn't trust to our organization. Also, they absolutely haven't any trust to government structure. That's why most part of our project we work with the problem of how to link the society. And in the first period of time of our organization, we have a lot of architects, and we would like to have some architectural project, but we must work mostly with society and to help people build the society. And it was a really difficult part of our work. But however, we have in contrast the example of reactional communities in our country. And it's not about the positive changes, it's mostly about the negative agenda. People really have lots of potential to work with the community by themselves. They made all the time the reactionary community to stop something changes that initiated by government. It's mostly about public hearing of development projects of territory, and also it's about some constructions in the courtyards. And people doesn't like it and make a lot of companies to stop the changes that they don't like. But the main point of reactionary communities is that when these communities achieve their goal, they stop their existence. And it's the most problem in Belarus that the communities have some goal. When they finish, communities stop their existence. And the first period of time when it wasn't like this, it's the last spring where we have when we have problem, start have problem as in other words, problem with COVID-19. It was the first major changes with when government says that they will do nothing with this problem and community must work with this but by themselves. And it was the situation when in our country, particularly in Minsk, there was organized the biggest reactionary community that in this community was involved all the city, all Minsk worked somehow with medicine. They a different initiative collect money and make some masks and other things that need to have in hospital and other institutions. And people try to help to medicine in a way how they could. And it was the first problem, and the second problem in this period of time was the problem with poisoned water. In several districts in Minsk was poisoned water in period of COVID-19, and it was a huge problem because people can't wash their hand because the skin reacts really badly on this water, and all the city take water from other district and give this water to district with the poisoned water. And it was the second case with when reactionary community really work and self-organized. And after these processes in our country started election processes, and people have a lot of company and self-organized small organizations that try to change somehow and involved in the processes with elections. And people have a lot of success in this case. And the next, what happened, we have August 9th, it's election day, and it's the day what changed all in our lives. After this day changed not just our life, but we really changed our mind how to use the messengers and how to organize. And Telegram became in this time the main platform of communication, and it happened because Telegram in the first 3 days became the only information and communication resources in period of August 9 till 12. This period of time torches street confrontations when the most hard, and when the internet was blocked and people could receive the news just from Telegram and only use the VPN, and the number of daily users in these 3 days increased from 5,000 to 28,000. And it's like really a big part of Belarus go for Telegram to use these sources. And also the second process when Telegram stay the main platform to communication. In the September 5 till 8, a huge number of chat was created, and it was a prototype of neighborhood community, and it's named local chats, and it was organizing just in 3 days. And it's the numbers of chats, amount of chat, how many chat was created in this period, and the less than half was in Minsk, and they was the most active communities. And I need to explain what is the neighborhood communities, what I will mean in the next part of the presentation. In our specialists say that local chat is the neighborhood communities, but it's absolutely not true. If we could say like this, just if we will be inside, it's more difficult structure. And we try to understand also what is the neighborhood community is. And in March 2021, our team made a poll to understand what the community is now for the people, what's the agenda, what's the problem. And the question we ask to the community member is, how do you consider to be a part of your community? And the answer was really surprised us. People understand that the neighborhood community is not about online chats. It's everyone who lives in the apartment block and courtyards, and people who actively participate in the life and courtyards. And however, it's important to note that local chats were formed primarily the territorial relation in 3 day. In 3 day, when local chat was formed, people defined the new territorial units. The boundary of the units was based on people and sense of belonging to the territory. In fact, in couple of days, people in Belarus redefine Belarus and Minsk for more comfortable unit as people could associate with themselves, territories that people look like every day, and people live nearby this place. In contrast to huge administrative districts that actually we have in every city. Also, in each territory have made a local chat, and people, it was very helpful. Our initiative source make interactive source catalog Десятки размова с соседями, where people could find a map and people could find the new non-administrative district that was organized, decentralized initiative in Minsk. Yeah, and
sorry,
yeah.
I have to cut you. It's really interesting, but we need also to if you have just a few words to finish on that, and maybe we can go to more details later.
Okay, I try to be faster. I need to say about the reaction of NGO and activists on these processes. NGO and activists include in this process to help organize their NGO to communities, and a lot of people include in this processes to build offline communities, and they want to people, and we have a lot of decentralized celebration and other processes, and it was all these processes was in the autumn, and we also involved in these processes to help organize their community. And to finish, I need to explain the agenda of neighborhood community now. I start my presentation that our communities was just about reactional community of some negative case, but now the communities understand themselves as responsibility, some civil society in making decision community, and on the repression that happened now in Belarus, from the reactional community to the community that could find how they could formalize themselves, and they try to look in some goal from the community and how to make the structure of the community. People make some organization and NGOs and activists and civil society initiative help the community to became a part of decentralized structure in informal communities that could be a background to some democratic promising future. Yeah.
Many thanks to all of you for your great and in-depth insights regarding your individual experiences. Now I would like to turn to a specific topic of local development, which is cross-sectorality. Cross-sectorality is, of course, an essential aspect of local development, as it refers to the involvement of actors from different sectors to tackle the same and common problem. So now I would like to turn to both Mr. Jaśkowiak and Okaretnie. I would like to know, as you are from executive authorities, I would like to know your relations with civil society organization. You both mentioned the fact that citizens are really important in your policies, in your public policies, that you cooperate highly with civil society organization, notably in terms of how to design new directions, how to know the needs from the people. So I would like to know, basically, how do you identify potential cooperation with these local actors? I remember that Mr. Jaśkowiak just said that you cannot collaborate with everyone, but you need to select, to identify the best one, the best advices from this civil society organization or citizens. So how do you identify them? And also, I would like if you, in your case, in both of your case, in both Poznan and Vinica, do you have rather a proactive attitude, meaning that you identify by yourself the most important priorities for local development and then implement local development initiatives accordingly? Or do you rather consider your role more as one of a coordinator? Maybe Mr. Jaśkowiak, to start with, as I understood you are more in the proactive way.
So, first of all, we are organizing the system of grants. It means every year we have the special commission, which is where are the members of different societies and where are no politicians, in fact, or where only the people working for the city hall are some kind of coordinators. And so we have the system of grants. And so every year, if we organize some action in environment, in culture, in sport, or something like this, then they have to apply for such grants, and then it is the way they receive the money. Some money they receive also from the business, because you know, if we see that some activity is very good for the society, it is very good for the city, and if I see people who are very active in such activity, then I also ask some companies to support such activities. So they have two sources of money. It means one side it's business, sometimes also the state, sometimes they received also the grants from our government in Warsaw. And sometimes they received part of the money from us. So it is the way of financing such activities. And of course, I'm only coordinating some things. Also, if they invite me to discuss some issues, then of course I have some access to the knowledge, to the experts, because you know the mayor is not good in some details. It is no way that I know a lot about education, about environment, and so the way I work, it is from one side I have some access to the experts, and then if I discuss some issues, so then we are looking for some good solution for the city or for the region. So at the end, I'm only coordinating some things. Even if I start some actions, even if I invite them to some actions, so I do it because I received some analysis, some things from experts. Or it is also the very important thing. If I travel, if I see some solutions in Kiev, if I see some solution in Berlin, in Munich, or in Copenhagen, so then it is also normal. My colleagues, my friends from different cities, mayor from Copenhagen, mayor from Berlin, they give me the access to some knowledge. They show me some solutions they decided to use sometimes ago, and then in this way I have some access to the knowledge, and then if I have such access, I give this knowledge to the civil societies, and so it is the way we are doing.
Okay, thanks. What about you in Vinicius? What is your view of cooperation with civil society organization concretely?
У місті Вінниці вперше в Україні створений.
So in Vinica, we created a municipal hub, the first in Ukraine municipal hub for the development of the civil society, and this hub transformed into creation of community unity like City Network. We have 47 civil society organizations in this unit, and they're self-governed. Then they apply with their propositions. We have a communal enterprise, the Institute of City Development, and it's coordinating all this, the work, and it cooperates with civil society. Each year we allocate certain budget from the city budget for to finance the projects, then win the competition. And every year the number of this public enterprises, it increases. They are very active, they bring up new ideas, and most of the ideas are implemented. Speaking about the hub, it is a social innovation for Ukraine, and there are not so many hubs like this in Ukraine, but our territorial community managed to do this and provided the most comfortable conditions to develop this public space, to create the platform of dialogue between the authorities and the community. Speaking of this dialogue, we also have some mechanisms that created due to the initiative of the people. So we have the system of petition implemented. In 2020, the citizens of Vinnytsia created 274 petitions. And also we have some budget program that we implemented together with our colleagues from Berlin, and 555 projects were submitted, and most of the projects that were supported by the community were implemented. So it is the citizens who create the platform for implementation, the things they want to see in Vinnytsia. It's not about city development, architecture, roads, or other infrastructural things, but also like books publishing, for example. Vinnytsia is the home of Mykola Pirogov, a very famous surgeon. Our transparent office in Vinnytsia region provides 582 services. It's the biggest number in Ukraine. I don't know about the world, but in Ukraine we are in top. So this type of services allows to react promptly to the challenges, and it allows citizens to address the authorities quickly. In 2020, with the commencement of pandemic, we started to provide more digital services, and we're going to increase the number of digital services we provide. So Vinnytsia community uses the budgets and participatory budgets, and it is very important for us to see the local initiatives implemented in life. Some of them stronger, some of them more weak, but all these initiatives allow Vinnytsia to develop and to be #1 city in the territory of Ukraine.
Thank you for your insight on that. I would like to turn to Madame Kepikova. You are from civil society organizations, so you may have a completely different vision about this relationship between civil authorities and between local authorities and civil society, and also about cross-sectorality, also because Belarus is now in a situation you explained, complicated situation. So my question would be, in your daily work, how do you combine the need to meet citizens' expectations on the ground with the reality of dialogue or non-dialogue with local authorities? Do you maintain at the moment dialogue, or it is impossible? What is your view on that?
Yeah, actually, we previously we have also problem to communicate with local authorities. Previous 26 years, all civil society organization was marginalized, and people can't really work with civil society. The last few years, we tried to have some dialogue in urban agenda with our city, but we have a lot of problem because cities really don't want to hear civil society organization, and now situation changed in a worse way because the civil society organization and civil society in general it's can't communicate with authorities at all because we have a different agenda, different different view how to develop Belarus and our cities in future, and we can't have some compromise now with authorities, and we haven't got any dialogue now with authorities, and it's a really huge problem for us because we have a lot of initiatives that became to start now, and a lot of initiatives that was before, but we can't initiate any changes because all our actions blocked by authorities and city councils and others. And I'm really glad to hear from other speakers how they work with civil society organization, and I'm really glad to be there and hear this positive thing.
Yeah, of course, we understand very much that the situation is more than complicated on your side, and so it leads to another aspect of local development, which is transnationality. So if cross-sectorality is difficult, transnationality is also an option. And I would like to pass the floor first to Madame Tserelishvili, because your organization, as we discussed, Platforma, is the essence of transnationalism in terms of local development. So I would like to know more concretely from your perspective, and maybe through concrete examples, it would be really nice for us to hear what does transnational cooperation can bring to local development.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good question, but at the same time, it will not be easy to respond it easily. So I'll try to. So as I explained in the beginning, Platforma members are cities, big cities, local governments, regions, big regions, and also association of local governments. Just before explaining transnationality, I would like just to underline one of the challenge we have when it comes to associations of local authorities. So just for you understanding, association of local authorities, they are main stakeholders for us to cooperate with, to be in touch, because they are in place, they gather all the political parties, all the political actors, and they are politically neutral. One of the challenge for us is to make local elected politicians as the main policy makers, as the key players when it comes to state reforms. For instance, when the national governments, especially in these three countries, where the national governments, they have very important parts of Soviet Union and very centralized countries they were. So we had this sometimes challenge of recognition as elected representatives and politicians and their associations. They are main policy makers when it comes to reforms on local level and competencies on local level. So that's one comment I wanted to do. But when it comes to transnationality, yes, we gather very different broad of partners. So as I said, regions, cities, associations, and local authorities. In this case, so our main goal is we are network in linking local and regional public policy to the global agendas and international development agendas, and vice versa. For instance, we have, as you know very well, a global agenda, a 2030 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. We have Paris Agreement. We have new urban agenda. So all our members, all our partners, Platforma, we work together to link and to make it clear how it's important to localize and to link local public policy to the global agendas. So Platforma, for this, Platforma considers that decentralized cooperation, decentralized development cooperation is one of the most suitable tools to involve local and regional governments in these global agendas trans-internationally. And we keep looking for upgrading practices and for innovative instruments as well. We are a network of for advocacy, we are a network for innovation, we are a network for action. So we have these three main pillars in order to make it transnational, as you said in the beginning. That's that's a links we make in Platforma.
Well understood on this point. Mr. Jaśkowiak, I would like to talk more specifically about transnationality in the context of Poznan. When we look at Poland in the past 3 decades in the Euro-Atlantic community, it has been a security reservoir, becoming a security provider. Could we say the same for Poznan at the level of local development? Is now Poznan sharing the good practices in local development for the past 30 years to its neighbors? I know that Poznan, for example, is twinned with cities like Kharkiv or Kutaisi in the Eastern Partnership countries. So what is the cooperation from Poznan in terms of transnationalism?
So, once I was asked, where is Poznan? And I answered, Poznan is, between Munich and Moscow. It means we are mentally, a little bit from east, a little bit from west. Everything is a mixture, in fact, also mental. So from one side, we have good experiences of collecting some good practice from the West. And we have also, in my opinion, quite good understanding of our mentality. We, after the World War II, all our countries were in the same system. And so I try to share our good experiences, and doesn't matter if I speak to the mayor of Kharkiv. Yeah, now we know we wait for the new election. If I speak, because a friend of mine is Vitali Klitschko. I visited Kiev many times, and so in such discussions, if Vitali is asking me about some parking policy, what to do to solve some problems, then I answered him how we try to solve the problems, because taking some solutions directly from Berlin, from Munich, from Copenhagen, from Oslo, it is not so easy, because if people are mentally not prepared for such huge changes, you have to do it step by step. And so the same. We have also before the pandemic, we had the direct flight to the Kutaisi, and so I discussed some aspects. I met the mayor of Kutaisi in Tel Aviv. We were invited together to some debates, and so I try to share our experiences, our good practices. Also our failures, because sometimes you are trying to go with some solutions and people are so against that it is always the balance between some solutions. You know it is good for the society, it is good for the city, it is good for citizens, but then you have such big problem with mentality of some people, and so also taking this NGOs into the some activities, you change the mentality of the society, and then it is, in my opinion, very important for such countries like Poland, like Ukraine, like Belarus, and to share some experiences, to help each other, to also to travel. I like to travel because, you know, before being elected, I was in business. And I know if you have to deal something, if you have to do something in business, you have to meet. And so for me, it is very important to have the opportunity to see some solution in some different places, to have some access to the experts. And also, you know, I have a very good experiences with students. Additional, I'm giving some. I have the lessons at the university, and I have students from many countries, from Ukraine, from Belarus, from Russia, from previous Republic of Soviet Union. And so I received also very good knowledge of them. The discussions with such students, it's enormous important. And the previous mayor of Wrocław, Dudkiewicz, had the opportunity as a student to study in Germany. Me too. I spent 6 months in the Germany, in the Western Germany, most times. And, you know, it had a very big influence on my mentality. I understood better a lot of aspects. So till now, I have contacts with my colleagues from this time, from the time of studying in Germany. And if somebody has such opportunity to meet different countries, then we can know better each other. We can have better understanding of each other, and we can share the good practices. So traveling world, listening to people, being open, not being close to the stereotypes, and so it is, in my opinion, the most important aspect for everybody, for politicians, for society, and for NGOs.
Okay, many thanks for those good tips in terms of cooperation. I would like to ask a last question, very last question, because we are lacking of time, a little bit to Mr. Okaretny, because you mentioned a large list of objectives for local development, a concrete, intense list of objectives. You also mentioned the possibilities of doing transnational cooperation. You mentioned Poland, you mentioned also France in terms of agriculture, for example. What I want to know, you also mentioned problems in terms of budget. So how do you how Vinnytsia needs transnational cooperation? Is it in terms of budget? Is it in terms of good practices? Is it just in terms of synergy? So how do you view transnational cooperation from Ukraine, now that we heard from Poland?
Well, first, I would like to say that during decentralization, we have income tax, which is 60%. The state budget is formed using 60% of the income tax. So for us, it is very important to develop local business, which will create new jobs in Vinnytsia. In this area, we can tell you about the practice that we already have. At the national level, it is called business nanny. But locally in Vinnytsia, we support business from the very beginning until their technological lines are implemented into real life. As for the successful cases, we can speak of Berlin Tech Invest, about a Grana Fund, investments from Austria, about electric systems, which produce a lot of equipment for Mercedes. This is Delphi company. As for pharmaceuticals, we have a company which works using Spanish investment, which allows them produce a lot of high quality medicines. So the list goes on and on. But speaking of 2021, this year we have a lot of challenges, of course, but we hope to start to launch 2 big projects in Vinica. This is Austria. This is HAT, Austrian and British company of skiing equipment, and then construction equipment company TCS. This is a company which uses Portuguese investments. We will support these companies from the very beginning. We have created a platform so these companies feel at ease in Vinica. We have national challenges, all of you know what these challenges are. Today we work with all state institutions in Ukraine, and we are talking about connecting to electricity networks. This is a stumbling stone for us because we have some problems with them. But we are working to tackle this issue, and I hope that thanks to the initiatives of electronic cities in Ukraine, we will be able to move forward in this area and to work with industrial parks. Speaking of cooperation with international institutions, then we have a good partnership with governments of Switzerland and Germany. Speaking of integrated development of cities in Ukraine, they actively support us, supporting their 8 cities partners. We have developed the concept of integrated development of our city thanks to GIZ. Speaking of cooperation with Switzerland, they help us with our transport infrastructure. We have very good experience of cooperating with them. They support us financially, and they also support us with their advices, which helped us become the first in terms of transport infrastructure in Ukraine. Our transport are best adapted to people with reduced mobility, and we are really proud of that. As for the Canadian Association of Municipalities, it has been working actively in Ukraine, but as of now, they are wrapping up their activities. They helped us a lot. They had a lot of projects which are now being implemented in Ukraine. So I would like to sincerely thank our partners and express hope that other cities will also be part of these projects.
Many thanks for this concrete examples of transnational cooperation, and many thanks to all of you for your concrete and very interesting answers to the questions. It was a real pleasure for me to moderate this discussion, and the audience, many thanks for listening to the discussion, and thanks for passing by. So now I will pass the floor to Olena for the last few words.
Yeah, thank you, Roman. And before we finish the event, we would like to have a small open space for the discussion, because maybe there were people who just wanted to say something at the first panel or at the second one, and now we will have this free space. For example, Natalia Storostenko, she raised her hand at the first panel. And now I will pass the word to Pavlo Fedorev, who will facilitate this small discussion, which will last about 10 minutes.
Дякую, Олена.
Thank you so much, Olena. As Olena has already said, we would like to ask Natalia Storostenko if she wants to add something, because during the first discussion panel, we didn't have enough time. So it looks like Natalia doesn't want to comment right now. Then I have a general question to everyone. A question related to, so how in your opinion we can combine or try to combine those academic perspectives and practical perspectives, aimed at increasing the quality of local government, local development. What academia can give to the practitioners, and what practitioners would like to get more from the academia?
I think that Bella raised her hand.
Yes, may I? Thank you. Thank you very much for this very, very good question and very timely. This is a discussion we have, to be honest, in Platforma right now. And we try to identify, because we start new phase of budgeting from September, and we are identifying the new projects and new activities. And one of the questions we raised internally right now is how to involve academia in our work. So we did not find a solution, but one of the proposition is at least to have them with us when we organize forums, when we organize webinars, exchanges, when we speak about decentralization, when we speak about climate change on local level, or even gender equality, to have their expertise, to have their insights, because we need an inclusive approach from all sides, from local, regional, national, European, but academia as well. So I agree that we miss this part right now, but we would be delighted to collaborate with them and with your colleagues, from the first panel, how to be more inclusive, let's say. Thank you.
Дякую вам, пане Ігор, Оксана, ще рука.
Thank you so much. Igor, Oksana, you wanted to comment?
Well, I may say something from both perspectives. I'm like a scientist, social scientist, and a former local government officer. I would say that when it comes to Poland, I think regional and local authorities, from their side, I do not see real demand from expertise from scientists, unfortunately. Maybe Mayor Jaśkowiak has another point of view, but that would be my experience. But I just wanted to comment on twinning, on territorial cooperation. Maybe you know the research made by CMR in 2010. Unfortunately, we do not have newer research about twinning in Europe, but in 2010, Poland was held third place when it comes to twinning in Europe after Germany and France. It means the number of contacts, international contacts of local and regional governments. So we made the transition from the country that received knowledge, experience, to country that shares its experience, especially in Eastern European countries, Eastern Partnership countries. Sorry. That's one thing. When it comes to Polish-Ukrainian twinning or territorial cooperation, what I found out in my research is that in Polish-Ukrainian cooperation of local and regional authorities, we focus mainly on, let's say, people-to-people contacts. It means education, culture, sports, tourism, and this experience exchange. I mean, the system of local government, support of local government to entrepreneurship, and so on and so on. So it's an important part of Polish-Ukrainian territorial cooperation. What failed is economy. I mean, Polish and Ukrainian local government officers would like to cooperate in this area, but it fails. I mean, there are no, let's say, common views, no links to boost economic cooperation through cooperation of local and regional authorities, unfortunately. And that would be the comment. I have one practical question to Ms. Tskelishvili, Gawar Jabat. I would like to ask you if your program, I mean, just want to recall it, the Bridges of Trust. Is it a follow-up of ULEAD peer-to-peer program, which was conducted in 2018? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamarjova. Thank you very much for pronouncing my name as well, because it does not happen very often. So your question regarding ULEAD, it's one of the program of the ongoing. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's one of the. It's a little piece of program they have, ongoing program on ULEAD. It's one of the part of city-to-city international partnership development. So I do not know from the past. We do not have an experience working with ULEAD, but right now they have this undergoing program, and because of now coronavirus and everything, maybe they will not be able to end this timely, and that they will prolong the project. But yes, we are one of the part of this, because we are a network of local authorities. That's why they approached us. That's why we signed this agreement, and we work with pleasure with them, because we would like to help Ukrainian small-sized municipalities to link to EU, for example, from Slovakia, from Poland, etc.
Дякую вам. Останнє питання, яке я поставлю.
Thank you very much. The last question I'm going to ask at this panel. It was the same actually that on the first panel. So how city policy is different from local policy? What is the role of locality of the city in the modern regional policies? But before that, I saw that Mr. Vlad Makhnenko wanted to say something. Thank you very much, Pavlo. The previous question about the influence of academia on regional policies, I think that regional policy of European Union cohesion policy is probably the guiding example of how academia can influence the state policy. I want to remind you that during the 2 terms of European Commissions during 8 years, Philip McCann, who is the author of the most popular textbook on the modern city regional economy, was the special counselor of regional commissioner on regional issues, and the influence of academia, of the specialists in economy, geography, and city development on the policy is really considerable. And I think the success of European regional policy, apart from the due financing, the success is that is that the academia has considerable influence on how the policy is being formed. In Ukrainian, the ministries, I don't know who are their counselors, who are their advisors, but if we want to change the system, these people should be from academia, or they should engage special advisors, special counselors who will advise them what to do, because actually science has, like academia has answers to a lot of questions, maybe not all of them, but these answers are already in place, just you need to be able to hear them. This is my comment. Thank you. Thank you very much. If anyone has any comments or reactions right now, you have an opportunity to do this. Okay, then I would like to thank you very much again for your attention, for your participation and involvement. And I encourage you to read the materials published on our website and the materials provided by the speakers of this conference. I think you will find a lot of interesting information about the regional policies, local developments, and the changes around us. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague Olena.
Thank you, Pablo. And yeah, thank you everyone for participating and being with us today. I think these discussions were quite interesting and fruitful for everyone. And before we end, I just wanted to say a small announcement about our next activities within this series of public events. We will have on the June 17th, we'll have a networking event which will bring people from also different fields who are dealing with local development, and we will announce it soon. So also I'm very inviting you to join this networking event, just to make others and have some contacts with the other actors in the local development field. And also we'll have 2 more public discussions like this one. The first one will be more focused on the topic of internal migration and how it's related to the local development, and also to the like such phenomena as shrinking cities or so-called depressive regions and things like that. And another discussion will be concentrated on the topic of universities as actors in local development, as drivers of local development in the cities. And for also, I would like to say that you can follow Cedos think tank in different social media, on Facebook or on Instagram. We also have a web page where also the material that Pablo was talking about was published, and was also published already in English. So after the event, you will get also the email with the link to this material. And also we have a MISTRA site, which is also a web page where you can find published materials about different urban development issues and also local development. Also, we'll have in June Ukrainian Urban Forum, which will be dedicated to the concept of the right to the city, and also somehow it will be related to some issues in local development. And we will have some public events as this one in the frame of Ukrainian Urban Forum, and also we'll have the second episode of the second season of the podcast, which is also part of this forum. And also, if you want to support us, you can donate something if you want. Just at our website, we have the option for donation, and we will be very thankful if you can support us in this way. And so thank you very much again for joining this discussion today, and I hope to see you at our next events, and wish you all the good day, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Дякую.
Huge thank you to everybody.
Дякуємо.
Дякуємо.